Thank you so much, Kevin, and thank you everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being present to bear witness and participate to this exceptional moment in our journey as we reveal the results of the 2024 Battery Passport piloting exercise. First, I'll say a little bit about who we are as the Global Battery Alliance, what we do, and I say we in the broadest sense here because this is we, this is an alliance, a multi-stakeholder organization. Many of the organizations whom you represent in this room are directly part and members and participating in the Global Battery Alliance. Many of you contribute in other ways. We are a multi-stakeholder organization, in fact the world's largest multi-stakeholder organization for battery value chain sustainability. We have representatives from industry. We have some of the largest companies in the world in the battery supply chain who are our members. We have representatives from civil society, NGOs and foundations, again some of the most prominent civil society organizations in the world we're privileged to call members, public organizations, technology partners who make the whole thing happen, who implement the technology that underpins this groundbreaking battery passport concept, and industry associations and many more besides who are working together with us on this vision of sustainability. The GBA is built on a vision of responsible, circular and just battery supply chains in 2030, and the battery passport is the flagship initiative of the GBA. So we're going to dive now into the vision. What is the vision of the battery passport? To accelerate the scaling of circular, responsible and just value chains by establishing a global battery passport ecosystem that includes harmonized sustainability performance expectations for batteries, making company efforts towards this vision measurable, making them trustable, and making them comparable, and tracking and rewarding the improvement actions that we see across the value chain with a comprehensive ESG score for consumers, for investors, for every stakeholder in the battery supply chain. Within our vision, within the program, where we're going to see that score on the physical battery level for the first time, to see the sustainability performance of a battery in real time through digital technology. We're doing this by putting in place a framework for measuring sustainability performance, layering that onto a digital battery passport infrastructure. And we're working with companies in technology and in the supply chain, partnering these two worlds to generate sustainability insights at the individual battery level. We've already taken some big steps in this regard. We performed our first round of piloting in 2023. We involved two major OEMs. We traced 2 minerals. And we involved 3 cell producers and 3 digital track and trace solution providers. These pilots demonstrated the integration of material flow data with ESG performance along the whole value chain, from cradle to gate. That means from mine site to actual battery production itself. This was an important first chapter in the story, but it was only the first chapter. The story continues. In 2024, we have uplifted our ambition. In 2024, we will see on the next slide, we moved from realistic data to real data, real sustainability data gathered from the supply chain and fed into a prototype battery passport. We expanded the scope. In 2023, we looked at environmental and human rights due diligence. We looked at child labour due diligence and at greenhouse gas emissions. And then in 2024, we've built that out. We've added 4 new rule books. We've added a biodiversity rule book. We've added indigenous people's rights, forced labour due diligence, and circular design principles as well. For the first time, an organisation, the Global Battery Alliance, has articulated some principles for designing a battery at the start of life so that it can be effectively recycled, reused at the end of life as well. This is pioneering work. We've also introduced elements of data verification for the first time. It's early days, but we have trial data verification to give confidence to stakeholders that the data, the sustainability performance data they're seeing in a battery passport is real and can be relied upon and can be trusted to be genuinely reflective of the sustainability performance in the value chain. And we've made strides in developing our scoring methodology in order to demonstrate the viability of this whole exercise, in order to demonstrate that supply chain sustainability performance can be measured, can be compared through a battery passport structure, to prepare participants in the piloting for upcoming requirements, legislative requirements. Clearly the EU batteries regulation is at the front of many people's minds, and participating in the piloting has allowed many companies to take some big leaps forward towards getting ready for that legislation that's coming. And to create learnings for the GBA and others to take the battery passport to scale, to work toward that ambition of issuing a sustainability certification on the battery so that stakeholders can be assured of the sustainability performance of the batteries that we all need in order to effect the clean energy transition, in order to transition us as a society to a more sustainable future. Let's have a look now at some of the scope parameters of what we've done. We've looked at 7 different materials: aluminium, copper, cobalt, graphite, artificial, iron phosphate, lithium, and nickel. We've traced the supply chains of all 7 of these materials. We've had 80% of the global cell manufacturing capacity involved in these pilots. 80% of the companies that represent 80% of global manufacturing capacity have participated with us in these pilots. This is a massive number. And we've had 10 successful piloting consortia report back sustainability data at the battery level. We've had over 200 sustainability reports gathered from sites, real physical sites in the battery supply chain, fed through this infrastructure into the output of a battery passport. And we've had 5 consortia who have engaged in additional data verification activities to establish that trust in the real physical reflection of that data of sustainability realities in the value chain. And that's been verified by 3 independent verifiers, 3 global verification organizations who have taken those first steps with us to defining what real, solid, believable data verification can look like in a final realized battery passport. And we've done that over 5 continents. We've done that over the 5 major continents of the world. We've gathered data from Australia, we've gathered data from Brazil, Chile, China, Poland, Singapore, South Korea, Zimbabwe, and others. All 5 major global continents have been covered by the data gathered by this exercise. And that, again, is a massive achievement for the consortium partners and companies who have worked together to pull this off. So now I've gone, that's all the framing, it's on to the results. Let's have a look at the next slide. Here is a QR code. Please get your devices out. You can scan the QR code, it will take you to the GBA website. If it doesn't work the first time, please refresh it a few times. This is definitely the most people who have ever used this QR code at one time, so just give it a little bit of patience, it'll come up. And we'll also have a look through some of the data that's actually on the big screen, live on the GBA website. This is the GBA website right now. This is the splash page, which hopefully your QR codes are redirecting you to as we speak. The battery in this car tells a story. That was the idea of our initial piloting exercise, which we moved forward in 2023. And now the story continues. We are launching right here in this room the results of the 2024 battery passport pilots with real-world sustainability data, and bringing together these consortia of battery cell manufacturers, traceability solution providers, and supply chain companies from across the globe. So please scroll down and look at some of the piloting results. But first, of course, a disclaimer. This is an important disclaimer. This disclaimer says that data in these battery passports, it is real, it is genuine sustainability data, but the purpose is not to compare company to company. The scoring methodology is under development. We have working groups speaking, developing ideas, refining that scoring. It's not perfect, we know it's not. This is a process. The idea is not to compare one company to another right now on an individual data point level. That's the ambition for future. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. The idea is to show the enormous achievements that all of the piloting consortia have made toward mapping their supply chains and implementing this methodology, which is going to lead us to real, tangible sustainability data a little bit further down the track. So this is the first pilot, pilot number 1, which was performed by CATL, NEO, and the technical provider of RCS Global. We'll look at the ESG performance data here. Scroll down a little bit, please. Now we can see here real-life sustainability performance data gathered from the supply chain. And you can see this covers the entire supply chain. This covers the supply chain starting all the way on the other side of the stage, at the mining stage of the supply chain, and then moving through the refining of the raw materials, through the manufacturing and through the cell and battery manufacturing to an overall score for supply chain sustainability coming out at the end. We're showing here the score for biodiversity due diligence, and we can see there's a drop down here. And we've got all of the GBA rulebooks represented here, from child labour due diligence, environmental and human rights, circular design, forced labour due diligence, indigenous people's rights, and then the overall score as well. So this is a very comprehensive effort towards initial stage mapping of supply chain sustainability performance. This data is also partially verified. We can see in these bottom rows here data proofs. Some of the data is self-reported, particularly in the higher stage of the supply chain. We go a bit further down the supply chain to the cell and battery manufacturing stage. We can see that quite a large proportion of the data is actually verified by third parties. Again, another massive achievement. Let's move on to the next pilot. Now we can see here some of the basic physical information about the battery, which is also another hugely important part of the battery passport. The total energy of the battery, the energy density, the time period over which the data was gathered, who the battery is made for, what vehicle OEM, and when, and those sorts of highly technical pieces of data which are so essential for understanding the battery and its story, and how that story can continue through the battery's lifespan, through reuse, through recycling, and through its ultimate contribution to a more sustainable society. And again, this is verified data. Two of Rhineland cooperated on this pilot and volunteered their time to prove the way, to forge the way with data verification. Well, let's move on to the next pilot. I think we need to go one tab over, please. One tab to the right, please. Thank you very much. So this pilot was put together by Sunwoda, LI Auto, PTL, and Ningde. This tab I wanted to pull up to show you one of the important principles of due diligence that we've got going on with these pilots. You see here on the ESG performance, we've got good data gathered, starting from the manufacturing phase and looking up the supply chain. Data's pretty good up to the material level, and then no data. No data at mining, no data at refining. And this is exactly what we would expect, because no one should expect that the entire supply chain should be mapped from day one. No one should expect full transparency, and still less full sustainability assurance from day one. One of the key values of the battery passport is in due diligence, and even just understanding where those data gaps are, pointing the way to where data can be mapped in future, where the supply chain can be better understood in future, and where those sustainability gaps in understanding are to fill and to create that assurance for our stakeholders in the future. So this excellently shows the work in progress, the progressive nature of what we're trying to achieve here. Lastly, I wanted to reflect briefly on some of the provenance data. We can see here in this pilot, we've gathered data from Zimbabwe, we've gathered data from Australia on the lithium that has gone into this battery. We've even gathered data on the percentages of lithium in this battery. 30% comes from Zimbabwe, 70% comes from Australia. We know the weight, we know the percentage that is fully traceable, and if we look to the battery information tab, we know where it ends up. It ends up in China. It ends up in China where the battery is produced, where the cell is produced, who produced it, and what and where the EV is that that battery is going to end up in, and who the OEM is of that EV, plus all of the technical data as well. So we have a really amazing start there towards full supply chain traceability that is taking in global, truly global supply chains from Australasia and Africa through to East Asia and Chinese manufacturing. So this is what we see here, a truly global effort towards supply chain traceability and sustainability performance uplift. The question, of course, is what do we do with all of this data? What do we do next after the piloting? And we're going to look now and reflect briefly on what the next steps are for the Global Battery Alliance. And by the Global Battery Alliance, I mean the alliance in its truest sense. I mean everyone in this room and all of our stakeholders and participants and everyone who's on this journey with us. We need to scale. We need to scale rapidly and enormously because the battery industry is enormous and will only grow larger and larger. These pilots are a great proof of concept, but they are not at scale. This needs to build up and up in order to have a material difference on sustainability in the global battery value chain. We are very aware that we need to refine our rule books. We need to streamline and clarify what we have in place already, as well as to extend these rule books to the existing ESG issues. We have identified 22 of the more salient ESG issues, and we are currently covering 7. So we need to increase the scope, and we do need to streamline because this whole framework of measurement that we're putting in place can only have value if companies can really use it and it can really be an effective and cost-effective tool for benchmarking and demonstrating their sustainability performance. So we will continue to develop a cohesive battery passport framework which is tied to our shared vision of a sustainable battery value chain, and we will continue to embed risk-based due diligence, which is not only a tool for uplifting sustainability performance in the value chain, but is also a tool for compliance for companies who are racing to meet the requirements for the supply chain due diligence of the EU batteries regulation and other legislation to help them to meet those expectations and those requirements effectively and robustly. And the GBA battery passport is a great tool for doing that, but we need to articulate better exactly how that tool can be used and leveraged and put to the best use possible for this endeavour. We'll continue to build our multi-stakeholder alliance, demonstrating this value of the battery passport for sustainability and for helping companies to achieve their compliance goals and go beyond, because there should be no limit to the sustainability ambition of companies, and there should be no limit to the ways in which they can demonstrate the sustainability performance through the GBA framework. Ultimately, we're doing this to achieve a circular, responsible and just battery value chain by 2030. And I want to end by emphasizing that this is a big deal. This is a big deal for the world. We are here by invitation of the world's largest battery manufacturer. We were recently, just last month, described as the world's most important partnership for scaling sustainable battery value chains by German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. And this is quite literally the greatest challenge that we have ever faced as a species to solve collectively together. How to effect a clean energy transition in a way that is sustainable and just for the world, just for battery supply chains, just for the world's people and its environment. So this is the challenge before us, and we are really honoured to be here with you celebrating this important step that we've taken on the journey. Thank you.